The air inside Signal Sol on the 79th floor was soft and warm, wrapped in the glow of golden lights reflecting off the panoramic windows overlooking the Han River. The city below shimmered like scattered stars. Gentle hum of late night Seoul created a soothing backdrop for a story no one expected Kim Woo-bin would tell tonight. It wasn't a grand press conference. Not an official announcement, but a quiet, intimate gathering, a private event arranged simply to honor his latest project. Yet as he stepped onto the small stage with Shin Min-ah seated gracefully among the guests, something about the look in his eyes told everyone in the room that this evening would hold more than professional words. There was an emotion lingering in his expression. Something tender, something deep. That said he had carried a truth long enough. He glanced once toward Min-ah, soft smile, gentle eyes, before turning back to the audience. And when he finally spoke, voice held that unmistakable tremor of a man about to reveal something precious. "There's something I've never talked about," he said. "Something that happened in Jeju, the day I proposed." A quiet gasp fluttered through the room, followed by a hush so complete it was as though the city outside had also paused to listen. Even Shin Min-ah froze, her lips parting just slightly, her expression a mix of surprise and a blush she tried her best to hide. Woo-bin chuckled softly at her reaction before continuing, slow, honest, and utterly vulnerable. He began by describing a moment many had never heard about, a small, private slice of life months before the proposal. On a rainy weekday in Hanam-dong, they had been walking together under a single umbrella, both a little wet, both laughing at how unprepared they were for the sudden downpour. Remembered how she wrapped her arm through his, pulling him closer even as water dripped from her hair onto his shoulder. They had stopped by a cafe, 2 hot chocolates, and sat by the window watching the rain sweep across the glass in long, elegant streaks. It was in that moment, he confessed, that the idea first formed, not fully, not with intention, but as a gentle whisper in his heart, "I want to spend the rest of my life with her." But it wasn't until much later, after countless dinners shared, after long nights of talking, after all the years she stood by him through illness and recovery, that he knew the time had finally come. She had been his warmth through shadow seasons, his laughter during quiet days, and the unwavering strength that reminded him he wasn't alone. Every moment with her, whether quiet or chaotic, had felt like home. He wanted the proposal to reflect that feeling, simple, sincere, and meaningful. Not a spectacle, not a staged event, but a memory carved into a setting that held a shared history. And so he chose Jeju Island, not merely because it was beautiful, but because it was one of the first places they had visited together long before anyone knew they were dating. Before the headlines, before the cameras, before the world decided to care. He chose Seopchikaji, the stunning cliffside where the sea stretched endlessly and the wind carried a scent of salt and wild grass. It was a place Min-ah loved, a filming location from her earlier days. A place she once told him made her feel small in a beautiful way. He went there alone first, weeks before the proposal. Walking the rugged path that wound along the cliffs, stood where the waves crashed fiercely against the rocks, listened to the echo of the wind rolling between the hills. Imagined her standing there with him, her hair dancing in the sea breeze, her smile glowing beneath the pastel skies of sunset. He prepared everything himself, quietly, secretly, carefully. A path lined with small glass lanterns, each one glowing with a soft flame that flickered in the wind but refused to die. A small wooden table carrying 2 cups of warm black tea, her favorite, and a ring he had chosen after months of searching, simple yet elegant, with their initials engraved inside. Note that it took him longer to choose the font than the diamond. The evening approached. The sky transformed into a masterpiece of lavender and gold. Clouds brushed the horizon like strokes of watercolor, and the sun lowered itself gently toward the edge of the sea. The world felt hushed, as if holding its breath for what was about to happen. Her hand guided her along the lantern-lit path, pretending they were simply out for a walk. She laughed softly, commenting on the wind, on the colors of the sky, on how calm the sea looked that day. She didn't suspect a thing. Or maybe she did, but if so, he hid it beautifully. When they reached the end of the path, the cliff's edge where the rocks dip into the ocean, Woo-bin paused. He turned to face her. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes curious, and for a moment, everything around them fell silent. No waves, no wind, no heartbeat except his own. so loudly he wondered if she could hear it. "I need a minute," he said, smiling nervously. Min-ah blinked. "A minute? For what?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. He stepped back. He took a deep breath. And he dropped to one knee. Min-ah's eyes widened instantly. She gasped so softly it was almost a whisper. Both her hands flew to her mouth as though trying to hold in the flood of emotions that rushed up all at once. The sea breeze carried her breath away. Her eyes shimmered under the last light of the setting sun. Min's voice trembled as he spoke, gentle, honest. Full of the love you never quite managed to put into words until now. "You've walked with me through the darkest days of my life," he said. "You lifted me, held me, believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Now, I want to spend every bright day with you. If you'll let me. Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then her lips curved into a trembling smile as she tried to speak but failed. She shook her head, not in refusal. In disbelief, and a tiny, breathless laugh escaped to her. She covered her face again, her shoulders shaking. And then the laughter melted into tears. And the tears melted into laughter. And Wu Bin felt his heart squeeze in fear and joy all at once. But up slightly, reaching for her. "Mina, are you crying? Are you laughing? Are you both?" "It's both," she managed to say through her hands. Voice tiny and soft. "Wu Bin, you can't just do this to me, like this, here, oh my god." He couldn't help but laugh too, out of relief, out of love. Out of awe at just how adorable she looked in that moment. Cheeks were flushed, her eyes shining. And her lips trembling between a laugh and a sob. She wasn't composed. She wasn't calm. She wasn't camera ready. And that made her more beautiful than any red carpet appearance could. He stepped forward and threw her arms around him. Burying her face in his shoulder. He held her tightly. Feeling her heartbeat racing against his chest. And then, softly, quietly, louder than the breeze, she whispered into his ear. "Yes, of course it's yes." He sank into the embrace, closing his eyes. The weight of the moment settled into his bones. It was a yes that didn't need to be shouted. A yes that carried years of shared memories. A yes as gentle as the tide and as powerful as the sea. As Wu Bin recounted all this at Signal Soul. He softened. He said he had never seen someone laugh and cry so adorably at the same time. "I was more nervous than any stage I've ever stood on," admitted with a grin. And across the room, Shin Min-ah hid her face again. Embarrassed and glowing. Just like the night on the cliff. Guests smiled. Some sighed dreamily. City lights twinkled like confetti falling from the sky. And it felt, in that quiet hotel room above the river, everyone had just been invited into the most beautiful chapter of a love story still unfolding. Even after Wu Bin finished telling the story of his proposal, the room at Signal Soul didn't move for several long seconds. It was as if everyone needed a moment to breathe again. "The most heartwarming part of the story," he said, "isn't even the proposal itself. It was what happened right after, something he had never shared publicly until this night." As he stood on the cliff at Siapchikachi holding Min-ah in his arms. Stunned by her whispered yes. She slowly pulled away, wiped her cheeks, and did something that completely caught him off guard. She reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a small folded letter, worn at the edges, as though she had opened and closed it countless times. Wu Bin blinked, confused. And then she pressed it gently into his hand. "For you," she said, her voice still shaky. "I've been carrying this for weeks." Opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note, simple. Beautifully her. "If the day ever comes when you're ready. I'm already ready too." He didn't realize he was smiling until she laughed at the expression on his face. She nudged his arm, suddenly shy. Him she had planned to propose to him someday soon, but had no idea he would beat her to it. "I thought I'd surprise you," she said, cheeks pink. Ended up surprising me first. Then, as if that wasn't already enough to melt him completely, she reached back into her pocket and pulled out one more thing, a thin red string tied neatly into a small loop. She held it between her fingers and looked at him with the softest eyes. "Remember Kyoto?" she asked. He did. It was their first quiet trip together after his recovery. A trip no one knew about. Where they spent days wandering side streets, drinking matcha in tiny cafes, and holding hands without worrying about cameras. In a little shop near Kayamazudera, she had stopped at a counter selling red thread of fate charms. He remembered teasing her about believing in destiny. Had smiled and said, "Maybe destiny is real, or maybe we just choose each other." Now, standing on the cliff, did the red string and tied one half around his wrist before looping the other half around her own. "So even if we get separated," she whispered, "find our way back." Wu Bin admitted to the audience that he nearly cried then. Not because of the string, but because of the way she said it, quiet, steady, full of certainty. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't grand. It was simply her heart speaking to his. Night, after the proposal, they called their families. Wu Bin's father, usually stoic, said only 4 words, "You chose well, son," before clearing his throat roughly. Minna's mother cried so loudly on the phone that Wu Bin could hear her even without the speaker on. And when they finally returned to Seoul, both families met for a small celebration dinner in Samcheong-dong, warm lights, soft music, red wine, and the kind of laughter that comes only when everyone in the room truly loves one another. When the story reached the public, Korea melted. Hashtags flooded social media instantly. Wu Bin Minna proposal, faded love story, real-life romance. Fans shared fan art of red strings, sunsets, Chikaji cliffs. Many wrote comments like they are the love story we all needed and protect this couple forever. Even fellow actors, normally careful about commenting, reacted with genuine joy, leaving messages of congratulations and hearts. Through it all, Wu Bin and Minna stayed exactly who they were, gentle, steady, grateful, and deeply in love. Wu Bin ended his story at Signal Seoul. To her with a smile that had the softness of someone who knew he had found his lifelong home. She met his gaze, cheeks warm, shining with a familiar mixture of shyness and warmth that made the entire room fall silent again. He closed the evening with one final sentence, spoken so quietly that it felt like it was meant only for her, even though the whole room heard it. "Day on the cliff, it wasn't just a moment I asked her to marry me. It was the moment I realized my life had finally, truly begun." As the audience sat there, wrapped in golden light and the tenderness of a love story told straight from the heart, it was impossible not to feel that this couple, this quiet, steady, destined couple, had written a chapter that would stay with everyone long after the night ended.